Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webcast. My name is Michael Tronto, and I'm a strategic account specialist at Microsoft. I'm also joined on today's webcast with Jim Patterson, who leads in the business development role, and we have a special guest, Richard Hundhausen, who is a Visual Studio Team Services specialist. Today, we're going to walk you through using Microsoft Visual Studio Team Services (VSTS) with OnePortfolio for total Agile Portfolio Management. As always, I will be sending out the recording of this webinar as well as the slide deck. So if you're unable to attend or have to leave early, no worries. You can reach out to me directly. Without any further ado, I will hand off the webcast to Jim.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate the introduction.
Muted.
Everybody, thank you for spending some time with us today on this webcast. Today's topic, using Microsoft Visual Studio Team Services, VSTS, with OnePortfolio for total Agile and portfolio management. Some of the topics we're going to cover today as we go on through will be to kind of give you some of the state of the Agile marketplace and Agile trends. We'll then talk about doing project management within Visual Studio, performing those Agile use cases. We'll then talk about Agile portfolio management and demonstrate that in OnePortfolio today. So we're going to get the whole gamut as we go through. So with that, let's talk about Agile trends. Now today, there's the rise in technology is really driving a lot of the advent and the growth of Agile within organizations. What were considered low tech or maybe even brick and mortar type of companies are rapidly becoming digital or software companies of their essence. And in reality, we're all becoming software companies. You know, where the department stores of old have become the Amazons of the world. No more waiting in line in Blockbuster for videos because we're streaming with Netflix and Hulu and other things that are out there. Just transportation with taxi cabs has been replaced by the Ubers and the Lyfts of the world. And just even simple things like getting soft drinks at a fast food restaurant has become a software-driven type of experience in many locations now. What this has done is change the landscape within a lot of organizations, and it impacts all roles and all levels of the hierarchy within our organizations, whether it be the executives who have to plan out new strategies on how they're going to address the marketplace and get to their consumers and customers in this new landscape, the PMOs who have to manage an increasing number of tech projects along with other traditional projects, the software development organizations that have to find effective and faster ways to get to market and respond to change, and then let alone the support people that have to support these things once we release them. Overall, it's very impactful across our organizations as well as our interactions with our customers. So what's changing is that in the past we had projects with long product cycles, and today we need rapid innovation. We used to use things like email for communication, and now social collaboration and more immediate types of things are available for instant feedback. Traditional workplaces have far-flung distributed teams that are telecommuting and working in various places across the globe. And then less data on these projects is becoming more big data with rich data sets that we can analyze, get better with, and also track the progress as we go on through. Now, there is a State of Agile survey that's done by version 1, which is now CollabNet version 1, and the 12th version of that came out in 2018. And what's telling is that in that survey, it says that 97% of organizations are practicing Agile somewhere in that organization. Maybe not across the board, but somewhere in that organization, 97% of organizations surveyed said they are practicing Agile. And that's up from 80% just in 2011, meaning the increase is rapid, and it's becoming almost full saturation for the organizations that are actually doing that. They are in different places in their journey. They are doing different levels of maturity within that, and they're sometimes finding their way, but it's going on somewhere within those organizations. Now, one of the things that prevents Agile adoption or hinders it in organizations from this survey, one of those things is loss of management control, because these things often happen at the team or start at the team levels. And the idea of getting visibility and keeping visibility into that thing is one of the main concerns of leadership as we go on through. So if change is the new norm, the pace of change is really increasing. Where we used to have longer cycle times and steady as she goes type of phased projects, we're now in a more unpredictable environment where constant planning for change is part of what we have to face, and we need new methods and tools in order to address those and accommodate those and still be relevant in our marketplaces. So with disconnected systems and teams, if we look at Agile portfolio management versus Agile at the team level, Agile sometimes is started just with, sticky notes on boards, but then team-based tools are used to then automate that and computerize that. The idea is that Agile teams go Agile for a reason. They want to be able to remain nimble, respond to change quickly, and get to market quickly and deliver in an iterative fashion. Where traditional portfolio management sometimes is more governance driven and is laden with process. And the idea is that we still have to meet the needs of the organization who's investing in these efforts, as well as meet the needs of being responsive. And then we have to scale this across organizations, not just at the team level. And the challenge is there is how do we take what's being done effectively at the team level and make it work for the entire organization and get executives a level of comfort and visibility in how their investments are tracking as they're investing significant time and effort and people into these things. So the idea here is we want to today talk about finding the right balance. How do we provide the right amount of agility with the tools and the approaches that Agile offers so that we can innovate, have quick time to markets and be responsive to change, yet provide leadership with the right amount of governance, visibility, and control that they need so that they can steer the rudders of the business as they go through. So with that, I'd like to turn this over to Richard, who will talk about Agile project management and doing this in Visual Studio. So Richard?
Great, thank you. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, super. Yeah, I totally agree. And this trend of more and more organizations adopting Agile practices is something that I'm seeing all the time. I've split my days lately with helping teams adopt agility through something called Scrum, which I'm hoping everyone on the call is familiar with Scrum. I'd like to go through some of the basics of it. And also the DevOps side of the house, so the more technical practices and tools for the developers and the technical folks on the teams. But yeah, my background is software development for a very long time, doing training on software languages and tools and technology. And I've kind of locked in on Microsoft's tool set, although when we're talking about agility and Scrum, all teams, regardless of the stack of tools they're using, really do need that. So I've spent the last, 8 years working with Scrum.org, helping them build their professional Scrum developer program, and lately helping them build something called the Nexus, which is a scaled Scrum framework for organizations having more than 1 or 2 teams working on a product and all the unique sort of dependencies and things like that that come along from there. But I want to talk a bit about complex product development. So that would be, next slide here. There we go. Oftentimes, agility, Agile, the Agile Manifesto, the Scrum framework is attributed to software development, and I totally agree. But why is that? And that's because software development is complex. And there's a graph here I start my conversations with from Ralph Stacey. This is one of several that you can use to sort of put a matrix around complexity. But basically all this is saying is more than half the times when we're asked to deliver something in software or product development, we don't know what the requirements really are. We're not going to be told we're wrong until they actually see the finished product. Same with the technology. How do we actually deliver that? So in software development, it is so abstract. It is so hard to envision the end product that you really have to start delivering in shorter increments and get that fast feedback. That's really the only way that this works. So one of the reasons this Agile approach to complex product development works is we give people what they don't want regularly, because they can't really tell us up front, hey, here's what I want. So we'll just start walking it in, and through collaboration, some other practices, we'll get to what that done state looks like. Same with how to do it. A lot of open source code out there these days. You can buy from component vendors. You can build, and then there's a million ways to build these solutions to fit the requirements. So just wanted to point this out, that primarily we talk about software development when it relates to Agile and Scrum, but it's anything complex where more is unknown than known about what you're building or how to build it. So let's talk a bit about Scrum. It is the most popular way to be Agile. I'm guessing if I went to people that were surveyed and talked to those 97%, most of them would say, yeah, we're Agile through something called Scrum. And the others that said, no, we're not doing Scrum, if I were to have them describe it, would sound a lot like Scrum. It is the most popular way to be agile. It's not new. It's been around since the 90s. The two gentlemen sitting there front and center in front of the cake are the creators of Scrum. That's Ken Schwaber there in the black shirt and Jeff Sutherland in the stripes. It just celebrated its 20th birthday with this big party in Boston a couple years ago in 2015. So if you want to be agile, Scrum is the framework that you can look at. Where do I learn about Scrum? There's a million books out there. I know I've written one. There's websites. There's all these trainings and videos you can watch. Well, if you want the official rules of Scrum, it's in the Scrum Guide. It's at scrumguides.org. It's authored by Jeff and Ken, and it was just updated in November. They put some updates in there to reinforce that Scrum can be used in a continuous delivery model, and that Scrum, recommends having people from operations on the team, should that be one of your goals, is to be able to deliver multiple times in the sprint. There were some other changes in there as well. So if you're a follower of Scrum, if you guys on the call today are using the Scrum framework, just go download this guide and kind of refresh yourself on what Scrum is. You might be surprised to realize that you don't have to do release planning, and the burn down is not part of Scrum. You don't have to stand up at the daily Scrum, things like that. So let's take a quick look at the framework itself. This is one of many process diagrams of Scrum. This just happens to be one from scrum.org. There's 11 elements to Scrum. There's 3 roles: the product owner, the development team, the Scrum master. There are 5 events, which technically there's only 4 events. They all fit within the sprint. The sprint is kind of an outward container of the other 4 sprints, or the other 4 events in the sprint. And there's 3 artifacts. And I'm going to demonstrate most of these things as I go through and show you Visual Studio Team Services, which I want to be done with the slides here very quickly and show you with some screens and things like that how Visual Studio Team Services can support a Scrum team so that you can be agile. VSTS, or just Team Services, is the Azure-hosted alternative to Microsoft's Team Foundation server. That's been around for, I don't know, 13 years now. But in the last few years, they basically took TFS, put it in Azure, put a SaaS model around it, and made it extremely easy to use. You don't have to do any management or updates. In fact, it updates every 3 weeks with new functionality, bug fixes, and performance improvements. If you're interested in checking out what I'm going to demonstrate here, aka.ms/VSTS there. Otherwise, I'm just going to drop in here and bring up my browser. And hopefully you guys will be able to see this soon. All right, tell me if you can see my screen here.
We can see.
Okay, good.
We're seeing the Wickersoft page.
Yeah, so it's at visualstudio.com, and you put your account name in front of it. And I just happen to have, scrum.visualstudio.com. I was an early adopter and got a really awesome account name there. But so this is it, and I'm going to start kind of at the high level here at the sort of admin screen, and I want to show you process. If you're wanting to follow the Scrum framework, there's a built-in Scrum process here that uses the nomenclature of Scrum, things like sprints instead of iterations. There's more of a generic Agile process, and then there's CMMI if you want a little bit more formal tracking, some extra workflow states and some things like that. But what's neat is you can actually take their default process and create an inherited process, which I've done, called Professional Scrum. So it's basically Scrum based on the Scrum Guide. And the project I'm going to be playing with today is actually using that. So let me pop over here to scrum.visualstudio.com/Wickersoft. And this is the default sort of dashboard landing page. Here we can see team members. I've got myself plus 4 or 5 others here that are going to represent my team. Going back to the Scrum framework for a second, someone's going to be our product owner. So in this case, it's Paula here. She's going to be the person that's responsible for driving the value in the product, the software that we're delivering. So she'll be the one that's ordering the backlog and making decisions around the value, deciding which items maybe should be towards the top of the backlog and delivered next, and which ones maybe can wait for another release or 2. In the team, we're going to have developers. That's the development team within the Scrum team. 3 to 9 of them, and they're the ones that actually do the work. They're the coders, the architects, the testers. They write the content, the technical writing, the releasing if you're actually going to deliver it to production. And then I've anointed myself Scrum Master here. So there's the 5 to 6 of us total on the team here. If I go to the product backlog, so that's under the work hub here, I can go to my backlogs. I've already loaded up some items here that we can see in the stories. All right, so I've got a couple dozen items in here, and this is just a traditional product backlog for improvements to make to a website. We've got items here that I'm going to want to show customer addresses. We want to enable another dashboard here. We want to show some ticket counts. Some of these I've marked as bug. I know that there's actually a bug work item type in team services, but I opt to just put everything in here as a product backlog item and then just tag those that are bugs. That way I get access to the business value field and the effort, because even when it comes to fixing a bug, there's still some value in that and some effort in doing that. So I wanted to just spend a moment here and kind of go product owner on you for a second. The business value field for one of these, let me open up this bug here. As a Fabricam technician, I want to see my own tickets from the dashboard so I can quickly see my work. Okay, so this is a bug in the team's view, and on a scale of 1 to 21, which is just an abstract Fibonacci sequence plus a couple zeros after the numbers, the product owner thinks this is of about medium value to fix this bug. And the team has come back with an effort of 3, also on a Fibonacci scale of 1 to 21. So it's kind of a medium value piece of work that's not much effort, less than half effort on that. So that's why this backlog's been ordered already kind of by ROI, the value over effort. A product owner can say, hey, I think that this customer phone numbers, in my opinion, has very high value, so that we can start tracking the phone numbers for our customers. And the team tells me, the dev team tells me it's very little effort. So this low-hanging fruit, items towards the top. We've got here one level of backlog called stories. I can enable other levels of my backlogs here. I can turn on features and epics. And this gets, a little bit towards the portfolio management. But what you can say is epics are just really big ideas that you want, or the product owner wants in this product. So we might have an epic here called, go paperless. And it's something that might take, several sprints, even maybe several releases, and even maybe several years to achieve. But it's an epic that a certain subset of the stakeholders, are really interested in and want to know progress towards. We can then have, at the next level down, features. You can actually add that right here in line. So maybe one of our features for going paperless is going to be online payments. And I'm not putting in a whole lot of meta in here, just the titles. And then underneath features, we might have a story that is actually now small enough to be delivered in a sprint for, I don't know, supporting PayPal is one of our payment options here. But what it lets you do is set up this hierarchy to show how features that are maybe demonstrated and released roll up to being part of the progress of an epic being completed. And down here, sort of at the team level, we've got the items that are being delivered, sprint by sprint. And then above epics might be the concept of portfolios, which we'll be demonstrating here in a little bit. All right, so let me go back to stories here. And as product owner, I can constantly be kind of moving things up and down. Okay, I want that one first. Oh, the team told me that this filtering code fix here has got some dependencies. We better do it a little earlier up. So the product owner is a hard role in Scrum, because you've got to be sort of taking in lots of inputs from persnickety stakeholders that want things. Where's my feature? I've been waiting for it. And the team saying, hey, we've got to fix some technical debt problems over here, and taking all this into consideration and ordering the backlog accordingly. One way you can do that is by going to queries, and you can just make a query. I've created one here already under shared queries called ready PBIs. And it's just a little query statement that says, hey, go get me all of the product backlog work item types that are in the ready state, and return back the columns, area path and business value and effort. But then I can go and chart this. So I could say, hey, I like to just at a glance see maybe, by area path, and let's sum up the business value. of this. So I could see that, hey, over this next, release or this next planning horizon I've got ahead of me, I've got 5,800 points of value planned to be delivered in my product. And I can see that the largest part of that is going to be in sort of the ticketing area of my app or the employee area. I can pivot this and say, hey, let's not think about it in value, let's think about it in effort. I can see, yeah, the sizes are kind of roughly the same ratio, that I'm investing my development effort in these areas here according to effort, and my business value I'm going to be returning back is this. And there's a lot of other graphs in here. You can go stack bar, you can kind of see both in one of them here. Let's do an area path here. Let's group by effort, and then we'll sum business value. So you can see that tickets is going to have maybe the most effort put into it. And of these things, the majority of them are size 8 items. We've got some really big boys in here, the size 13 items. The team tells us those are some pretty big chunks of work. Maybe we could only do one of those a sprint. So lots of cool graphs. We can take these things and we can actually stick them onto a dashboard so that stakeholders can drop by and at a glance see our progress, see our planned investments in areas and our planned return on those investments. But back to the teams here. Let's go back to the backlog for a second. And over here, I've got my sprints. I can have past sprints where I can see, work that I've completed. And let's say that I've kept it simple here. So I've got 3 items that were all of size 5. They were all done according to our definition. So my past sort of historical velocity up here, I can look at my velocity chart and say it's 15. So I know going into my next sprint, maybe we don't want to, as a team, plan more than 15 points of work. There might be situations where we don't want to plan more than 10 points of work if we're going to have lots of vacation or holidays or training or things like that. But then what the team says is, let's just turn on our forecasting lines and put in a velocity of 15. We can get kind of a heads up display here of what we think might be delivered. So for these forecasted ones here, let's not show those. Those are ones we're currently sprinting on. So I can see in sprint 3, I may be able to only do these 2 things before I sort of breach that 15 points. So if someone walks in my office as a product owner and says, hey, when's my profile doesn't update feature going to get fixed? I can say, well, we're thinking, given our current velocity and our current plan, sprint 6, but you can give them a number based on empirical historical data. And that's powerful. That's probably the lie that's going to be least wrong. I mean, I can say all kinds of lies when people ask me when something's going to be done or what's it going to cost. This one at least is backed by empirical data that the people doing the work have given you. So let's say that we're going to forecast just certain items in our sprint. I've actually already done this. I've dragged over these 4 items the team thinks that they can get done, drag them into sprint 2, set their state to forecasted. That way that the burn down charts, the velocity charts, the cumulative flow diagrams, if you're using those things in here, they'll start to update, because when you flip them to forecasted in the new sprint, that's when sort of the timers start, if you will. You sort of start working on those. This is a very boring view to work on though. As the dev team, I'm going to want to go to a board view. There's board views of all the backlogs in here. This one I think for a Scrum team makes the most sense because it shows the forecasted items on the left. And remember, the one at the top is the one that Paula wants the most, and the one at the bottom is the one that she wants the least. So as a team, as a cross-functional, co-located, preferably, collaborative team, we should be swarming as much as possible on getting Paula's most important one done here. So as part of our sprint planning meeting, we created our forecast on the left there. We picked the items we think we can get done according to our velocity and other factors. And then we're going to start creating a plan for doing that. And this is just no kidding. We're going to just sit down and brainstorm what kind of tasks do we think we'll need to do. And somebody in that meeting says, well, we need to update the database. Okay. And we need to, I don't know, update the UI. And someone else says, oh, we'll need to actually, update the code. I'm being very simple here. And, oh, we should probably create some acceptance tests. Automated, manual, we're just going to keep it kind of generic at this point. I suppose at some point we should probably run those acceptance tests. And let's just kind of wrap it up here with, I don't know, something like update the help guide that we can now track customer phone numbers. And there we go. There's our plan. There's our 6 sort of big tasks to get that that feature done, that user story completed. But I want the team, and this is what I tend to coach sort of new teams that are sort of new to working together and swarming on work. I want them to sort of, as a group, estimate how long it would take to do these, not assuming the best person for the job will be available. So, update the database, add some columns, maybe change some stored procedures. The group gets together and says, if Dieter did it, Dieter's our database person, it'd be 1 hour tops. But since we don't know if Dieter's going to be available when it comes time to work on this, we're going to go with a 2. And just kind of move things along here. They kind of agree that a lot of these are, less than a day of work. Create the acceptance tests. We'll assume running those acceptance tests they're going to pass. They're going to factor in any extra work for fixing any bugs or fixing any broken tests. We'll cross that bridge when we need to. And update the help guide is going to be pretty simple for this as well. And I've got kind of a simple example here, just to not create out, dozens of these things like some of your projects I'm sure would. So this is all done in that time box sprint planning event, 4 hours or less for a 2-week sprint on average, in which case you would do what I just did here, create these little cards, these tasks for all of the items in your forecast here. And then after the sprint planning is over, you've got your forecasted work on the left, you've got your plan to deliver it, and some kind of a goal that would wrap around a short narrative that would wrap around these 4 items on the left here is what we're delivering this sprint. So that each day the team can focus on the goal, the sprint goal, and commit to each other to delivering something to achieve that goal. But then day to day, the team is just going to start working on things. So let's say right after lunch or the next morning after the daily scrum, Dieter says, okay, I'm going to start working on this. So Dieter pulls that over, and I don't know if he's even in my list. There he is, Dieter. And Dieter says, yeah, since I am the person for the job, I'm going to re-estimate that, knowing I'm doing the work, knowing what I know today, not yesterday. So Dieter's going to start working on that. At the same time, we might have another team member, Tony, who's kind of good at testing. She's going to start creating the acceptance tests, and I guess we could also start updating the UI. Dave's going to be working on that one. And Dave and Dieter might pair up so that, as Dieter updates the database and adds some columns and discusses widths and constraints and things like that, Dave can be making changes in the UI. And then, later they're done. Dave is done with the UI. Now we're working on the code. Tony's since created those acceptance tests. Now she's kind of running them in parallel with Dave while he's coding this thing. And at the meantime, Jake's come along, got freed up because he's also helping out some other teams. Jake's working on the help guide, but for whatever reason, because his tooling is having troubles, his estimates kind of went up over what the group thought. Part of what I'm showing you here is this day-to-day work is messy, and let the team do the work, let them self-organize into how they do the work. If the team wants to use this board to represent their current plan and their progress, great. But I always caution, don't put a lot of creativity into your board and a lot of, hygiene into this. I'd rather you put that into the product you're developing. So if the team's sort of working agreement is to keep the board up, then by all means do that. But I wouldn't spend a lot of time in here making these things, perfect and spending a lot of time on the board. I'd rather see you spend time in the product. But to kind of wrap up here, the tools here in VSTS, either for the product owner at the backlog level, we've got the backlogs, we've got the board view of this. You can use this to model a definition of ready. You can use Kanban, which is another approach to being agile, not Scrum. You can run your Kanbans inside of a sprint if you want. I know teams doing that. But at the sprint level, the dev team, they can actually use these boards to assess progress and actually see their plan for the day and the rest of the sprint and know if they're going to make it or not. So I think these are some of the simplest tools out there, maybe just short of putting sticky notes on a wall.
Well, thank you, Richard. That was really enlightening as far as how easy it is to actually manage these things at the backlog and team levels for doing Scrum for organizations.
Yep.
So with that, let's talk about extending this beyond just Agile project management and really getting into Agile portfolio management. Richard showed you some great tools for executing and doing these things at the team and within the product type of levels, but there's when you're scaling Agile and looking at working on multiple releases and value streams and release trains and up through the executive level portfolios that people want to look at and the metrics they want to see, there's more that's needed than just the execution pieces that Scrum does such a great job for within the tool sets. So if we look at Agile portfolio and project management, what we're looking at is adding capabilities to complement what's being done well in Visual Studio and really build this out at the portfolio level. And that's where OnePortfolio from Microsoft comes in. It really provides and extends with that Agile portfolio management capability to be able to provide top-down planning. So a lot of things may go into the investment decision about what things we're going to embark upon, what products we're going to develop, what strategies we're going to pursue, and provide that executive visibility to an entire roster of or portfolio of investments and projects and efforts that are going on across the organization. And that could be a variety of Agile efforts that are going on. So what Richard was showing you is that bottoms-up execution and team collaboration that needs some visibility to the rest of the organization. And that's where OnePortfolio comes in. So if we go and look in more detail on the next slide, of the types of capabilities I'm talking about, whether it be from the intake side of things, to be able to provide an overall high-level dashboard across multiple projects, multiple products, multiple teams, to be able to look at portfolio-level prioritization and using things like lean metrics and shortest job first to determine what things might be the things for us to work on first. Aligning these efforts with strategic themes to make sure that we're working on things that align with where the organization wants to go. To provide then high-level timelines and roadmaps that say this is the roadmap of where the organization is going with all of our development efforts as we're going to market. And then the financial piece, to be able to put financials that executives need to know. So knowing what the investment's going to take, and then tracking capital versus expense as we look at the financial impacts of those things. And then there's overall resource capacity planning. Not just within specific Agile efforts or in different teams, but looking across the enterprise to see, do we have the capacity or the resources to deliver the things that we're committing to in this Agile portfolio. And then ongoing, be able to see portfolio status and health, and then be able to drill through to the details and look at individual project efforts to see where we stand and put narrative against those types of things. So these are all the kinds of things that Agile Portfolio Management and OnePortfolio can add to the execution piece at the team level. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Matthew Willey, who's going to demonstrate some of this stuff in action in OnePortfolio.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Jim. So I'm logged in here into OnePortfolio. OnePortfolio is part of the Office 365 experience. So if I was to hit my little waffle up in the top left, notice I have access to all my other Office 365 apps as well. And they all work together really well. It's actually built on top of SharePoint Online, and it allows me to then do these different roll-ups and such that Jim was talking about. So now let's go ahead and jump on into it. So on my homepage here of OnePortfolio, I can see, okay, we got 26 different portfolios going on right now. Those could be different initiatives, projects, programs, epics, you know, whatever it might be, different levels of things depending on how much detail you're putting into your hierarchy of planning. And we can see we have a total budget of 9 million, some active issues, you know, so on and so forth right here from my homepage. From this, though, I can then jump in and start to get into more details. For example, on my very first tab here, I see more prioritization types of metrics and lean metrics and such, which starts getting into safe or scaled Agile. How can we, you know, take this up across these huge, large enterprises and start to get higher level metrics and understand where we're at and where we should be prioritizing and moving things around. So I can see here these different high-level portfolio items can also be linked to strategic themes. And I could come in and filter this down and just look at, you know, I just want to look at my items for, you know, improving customer satisfaction or, you know, whatever it might be, and coming into my particular strategic theme and getting that information. I could also then, you know, look at things like WSJF, weighted shortest job first. And try to understand based off of some calculations of other information that I plugged in of where we should be focusing, you know, trying to knock off that lower hanging fruit first, the things that are going to give us the most business value, and so on and so forth, and get visibility into all of that. I can also start to look into timelines and roadmaps. So looking across all of these different initiatives that we have going on, and trying to understand where they're going to lay out in a higher level road mapping type of scenario, and see, when things are planning to be done, what status they're in, they're on a track, off track, at risk, so on and so forth, and be able to then filter this down and just focus into the key items that I'm looking at as well. From a financials perspective, if I jump into my financial details here, a lot of organizations really require you to track costs and break those out into capital and operational costs for accounting reasons and rules and so on and so forth. And so by rolling up the data from these projects that we're tracking in VSTS, as well as possibly keying in other sources of costs and such besides just labor, then we can really start to get a better idea of the total picture, total cost of ownership, if you want to say that, for these different products and applications and whatever they might be that we're managing and updating on a regular basis. So I can start to get into my OPEX, my CAPEX for each one of these different guys. We can break those into different categories like hardware, labor, software, so on and so forth, cloud costs, etc. Roll that all up into, say, right here, we're looking at it by year, but we could show it by quarter or by fiscal period or whatever it might be, month, etc. if you need a more detail there. And then we can break those things up into different business units and so on and so forth. And when I click on things, like for example, if I click on R&D, part of the pie chart there, then it will actually filter down and show me all of the other just the related information for those different pieces. Moving on here, from a resource management perspective, within a team, you saw earlier in VSTS how you can set, points based off of your velocity and track within a team. But this is really at the higher level, looking across multiple different teams and different roles and trying to understand where our problems are if we're trying to get these new initiatives in line and build out our roadmap. Where are we going to have problems? Do we need to bring new teams online? Do we need to hire more developers, more business analysts, whatever it might be? And we can start to see where some of the different issues are and get better visibility into that, at a higher level. Across these different teams and products and such that we may be working on. There's also a status report component of this. So if I come in and I go, for example, into my health summary here, what this is showing is all of the different portfolio items, initiatives, epics, projects, whatever it might be, and depending on your terminology, that may be a little bit different. And the status of these, executives, managers, et cetera, are always looking for nice, clean reports that they can see how are these things doing. Are we on track overall from a budget perspective, from a schedule perspective? Are we keeping to those forecasts that we had put forward initially, and understand where we're at within all of that. From there, you can actually drill through. So I could drill through from Fabricam, in this particular initiative, and drill through into a more detailed status report, which is just for that particular initiative that's going on. And this can be a mixture of some of the financial information and such that's coming out of OnePortfolio, and you can see some of that here, as well as we can roll in other information and details and total up things, from the backlog that was planned out for this particular initiative, roll that all back together from VSTS so we have one combined view of everything that's going on. Right from here, though, as well, if you're looking for just more specific VSTS information, more details around bug counts and this and that, we can also pull those in so that I don't have to try to, as a manager, go to multiple different places to see multiple different reports. If I'm a team member working in VSTS all day long, that's great for me. But as a manager, as I'm going through these reports, I may want to get into some of the more details here if I choose to do so. We can bring that all together within one place. Jumping back over here into my health summary, if I needed to make any updates to any of this or wanted to dive into more of the details, I can simply come to, say, like my Fabricam project here, and I will just click on it, and it will actually open up the detailed forms behind all of this, which is where I can come in and start editing and making changes and updating my status reports or my financials or whatever it is that it might be. So that's really going to give me the capabilities then to come in and start actually making changes, making updates, so on and so forth. And so we've tried to lay these out into some fairly easy to navigate forms, and there's different tabs here with different pieces of information that I may want to either review and or update. But these are actually configurable. So we can move these things around. We can add other fields if there's other information that you want to track. If there's things in here you don't want, we can remove those. It's all configurable. We don't have to change any code or anything to do that. It's very much drag and drop and add and remove, and all user interface driven, just changing settings and such. And so getting into it, on my general page here, I can see things like the current status. Oops, wrong page. General page here, I can see things like the current state, what type of an initiative it is, who's the manager of this, a brief description, so on and so forth. We can also pull in the business case information here, things like the value statement, making sure that we're aligned to business objectives and back to strategic themes and such, so that we're doing the right things, and also then pull up information like defects and such that could be coming out of VSTS. We're really rolling that all together, so it's one place to go to see all this information rolled up at a higher level. Into the financial side of things, I have budgets, I have forecasts, I can do actual costs, get all the details of that, and I could flip this over to an editable grid and just key things in, or these might be read from other places if we were to integrate with, say, financial systems and such as well. This can be a good point place to do that from. Into the resources, that we saw earlier, where those high-level resource plans are coming from, the types of people that we're going to need to do these, high-level initiatives, roadmap items that we can put in for, more detailed items and/or roll up, say, from VSTS. We can track risks and issues, and these aren't issues like, say, with the software. It's more like an issue of I don't have the right people or the right skill sets or the right software, or whatever it might be, more project related types of risks and issues, as well as then changes. We need to change the scope or the cost or the schedule, or whatever it might be, to then accommodate new requirements, say, that might be coming in. And then even providing status reports. So it's all good to show the raw data and how things are doing that way, but allowing the product owner and/or Scrum Master to come in and put in for these high-level initiatives, or maybe even at a higher level, like a program manager may come in and update the status in here with a little bit more narrative around accomplished activities, what's been planned, additional, so on and so forth. And this information here was what was feeding back into the views that we saw just a little bit ago. From here, though, because a big part of this, the execution side of it, is all going on within VSTS, you can see up here we have a button that will just easily link us over there. If I work in VSTS all day, every day, I can go in the normal way. But if I'm right here and I want to dive down into the backlog and get all of those details around the bugs and such, I can also just click on that. That will link me into the related item over there in VSTS, and then I can come in and see my product backlog that we were looking at earlier, and see how that those epics are broken down into different features, into different user stories and tasks, and utilize the Kanban boards and all of that. And as you're making those updates and updating status and planning and so on and so forth, that information is what's then rolling back up to that high-level portfolio item. So then we can get this higher level of detail and the visibility at a higher level into what's going on, and make sure we're aligning right to our strategies and such. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Jim for just a couple more slides, and we'll wrap this up today and let you go.
Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate that. So just as a summary and wrap up, I want to talk about a few things. Are you going to share the slides, or should I?
I turned it back to you, Jim. There you go.
Oh, I thought you were going to do the slides. There we go. Pardon me. All right. So let's do a summary or wrap up of what we've seen here so far today. Just in summary, hopefully we've communicated that Agile is definitely increasing in its use across all types of organizations. And Agile often begins with the individual teams and bubbles up to organizations through those team levels. And while they may start manually initially with sticky notes on whiteboards, solutions like VSTS can support the team effort much better by electronically automating that and making it more distributed. And then scaling VSTS and providing portfolio management capabilities above and beyond what's happening at those product levels usually requires additional capabilities. And OnePortfolio really can extend VSTS to provide Agile project and portfolio management. So what we showed here today really was OnePortfolio providing an Agile portfolio to extend all of the Agile work going on within VSTS. So providing kind of an Agile focused solution. We can do the same things with more traditional projects that might be managed in the Microsoft stack and Project Online, manage more traditional projects and roll these together to maybe provide a holistic portfolio of Agile and non-Agile projects. But our focus today was really to talk about how we can provide that Agile portfolio capabilities. And OnePortfolio is fully integrated with Visual Studio Team Services to provide a seamless experience for the users at all levels of the organization. So a little bit about Wickersoft. We are a global company with a lot of Microsoft certifications in these areas, and we partner with experts like Richard, who is very focused in the Agile and Visual Studio disciplines. We are a joint venture. We are partly owned by Microsoft and was founded in 2002. And we really are a full service one-stop shop to provide you business applications, deploying both the Microsoft solutions as well as the value-added solutions that Wickersoft brings to the table. We provide all the consultancy and training services around that to help enable you and make you successful with that, and work with experts like Richard in specific areas of discipline. We also provide staffing services and managed services to support this if you need help in those areas as well. We talked about Visual Studio today, but all of the Office 365 and Microsoft Cloud solutions like Dynamics, Project Online, Visual Studio, and SharePoint capabilities, we provide business productivity and work management solutions in all these disciplines and leverage things like Power BI for business intelligence and analytics across all of that. So if you have needs in those areas, we can support you with that as well. Just from an offer perspective for you being here today, we're happy to set up a free assessment and roadmap to see what it would take to get you from where you're at into a solution like this for your organization. We're happy to do that on a pre-sales and no charge basis, as well as potentially a trial and Wickersoft chaperone support through that trial to see to get you hands-on with these capabilities. Or if you were intrigued by the more generalized demonstration you saw today and you want something more personalized to meet the use cases and requirements of your organization, we're happy to set up a one-on-one demo for you and schedule that individually. You can either email us at nasales@wickersoft.com if you'd like an inquiry, and that includes to get a hold of any one of us or Richard, and we're happy to get you in touch. As well as if you want to find out more, you can go to our website at us.wickersoft.com, or if you want to look specifically at OnePortfolio, go to project-online.com/OnePortfolio. And if you want to see more about some of the things that Wickersoft is doing, we have a whole library of on-demand and upcoming scheduled webinars you might register for at wickersoft.com/webinars. So with that, hopefully you've gotten some value today out of what you've seen, how to manage Scrum within Visual Studio, how to extend those capabilities to a more portfolio management capability and environment, and provide kind of a holistic environment where senior leadership all the way down to the team levels can get their needs met through the solution and have it be done in a seamless fashion with no double entry on any part of anyone in the organization. With that, I would just like to say thank you for attending, and let us know if we can help you in any way moving forward. Have a great day.